And I haven't even started yet. Okay, so hello everyone, and thank you so much for sticking to the end. The best. I'm here, I'm Enrique Encinas, and I'm here to present on behalf of my co-authors the paper Making Problems in Design Research, the case of teen shoplifters on Tumblr. So please, here are my co-authors. I hope you stood up. I don't know if you did. But please feel free to direct all your hate to them in case you don't like it, and show me some love once the talk is done, in case you like it. We like to position our work within the broader debate of how HCI research should be framed, should be responded to, should be presented and carried, and everything like that. Because although HCI draws from a bunch of different disciplines, recently there have been calls to make it a more standardized, which is not new. It has been happening for a while. And the concerns are very understandable. Like, how do we ensure that it's coherent, that it's incremental, that we can generalize it? So, of course, it was Newman, for example, 20 years ago, Whittaker a few years later, and only 2 years ago, Wallace, and Horvath proposed a vision of HCI in which we should base our research depending on the problems we're willing to solve. So what is the problem? So this kind of represents that tendency towards let's find a common ground. At the same time, this is met with a lot of opposition, especially from the design research community. A common thread is that the problems are really non-tractable. They are necessarily complicated. They cannot be taken for granted, and you have all these branches of design that are design plus an adjective, like critical design, speculative design, adversarial design. So not so much about the problem itself, but how do we set the problem, and how do we characterize it, and what kind of theory does that produce? So let's not find a common ground. In our work, we look at that debate from the context of a very provocative and controversial online community. So Shoplifters follows a hashtag, and it's a blog online in the platform Tumblr in which users share blogs on ways to steal. They exchange pictures about what they do. They share stories about the practice. They respond to hate they constantly receive from others. So we have never heard of this community till we came across the data, and we thought, wow, this is super interesting. And it shocked us. The stuff we were looking at really shocked us, and possibly will shock you too. So I hope you don't blame me for what I'm about to show. I understand it's very challenging, and I hope you understand that what motivates us is to look at this super difficult data and wonder, so if there is a problem to be solved, what is that problem? And what does it mean that we want to solve it? So regarding the data and the particularities of how the platform works, basically you have all these posts and users post the stuff, but all these posts are kind of intermingled with a lot of other posts that have nothing to do with the community. So they might get hate, and at the same time even more comedic ones. Like, for example, weightlifters also use the hashtag liftblur because they weight lifts, and in the way of using that hashtag, they also take the piss on them. So our question was like, oh wait, how do we access this data, and how do we know that actually we are approaching that data that is actually from the community? So what we found is that there is within this community there is a tag that facilitates encountering each other online. So you might be wanting to shoplift, and you might want to not be alone in doing it. So they created Lifter Meetup. Lifter Connect is the previous version of the same idea, but basically is you post the city where you are, You say you're interested, and then a private communication between shoplifters and shoes so they can meet each other offline. And we thought, okay, if we take the posts of these people that are in there and we look at the community because they are willing to even take the risk of meeting offline, that might mean that they actually belong to the community. Obviously, the data is very problematic, and we make no claims to generalization beyond what we look in there. Also, we try to ensure that we don't compromise their anonymity, because they are already very aware of how their anonymity, how valuable it is, so they already. So we took over 1,000 posts from 15 profiles for the period of 1 month, and then we perform inductive thematic analysis. That was how we entered the data, so to say. So we clustered, we saw the different topics that were arising, we saw how they, how topics related to each other, and then we responded, we tried to respond to the data by using a variation of design fiction. So we call them imaginary abstracts. So it's basically a description of a plausible but completely fictional paper that we could have, that a fictional researcher might have developed in order to respond to the data in a particular way. So to frame the problem in that particular way. I'm not going to go into all the definitions of design fiction, because you can find that and you can read in the paper, but you can take the working definition for our talk as a description of a design answer to a what if in HCI. So let's go to the themes. First theme, tips and advice. Okay. This is possibly the very shocking, or the most shocking body of data. Here you can see posts, like it's an encyclopedia of stealing in shops. It's guides into the different retail stores, it's shoplifting tactics, way to avoid getting caught, how to identify where the cameras are. Crazy idea is like pretend you are chasing a Pokemon in Pokemon Go if you feel that someone is following you, all that kind of stuff. So we thought this is obviously a really, really valuable source of data that could be used quite straightforwardly as a kind of crime prevention possibilities. Like you could design something to actually design out the crime, to avoid the possibility from it being happening. So this is the first abstract, which is basically, I don't know, well, of course you have noticed that when you go to a shop, usually they have these tags that then you have a magnetic scanner, so if you're trying to steal it, you will beep. So in order to avoid that, in case you didn't know, you can use a magnet. You put a magnet in the tag, and then you remove the tag. And that's a very, very common practice within the community. So from the other perspective, to avoid that crime from happening, we could imagine certain sorts of lamps designed purposefully so that when they detect a magnet inside the shop, in the vicinity, it would light up. So then you might get someone approach to you and say, oh, so you're carrying magnets. And why are you carrying magnets? Oh, I love magnets. No, maybe not. The second theme that we identified was resistance and activism. This was also mind-blowing because you would think, if you were to take a cynical aspect to this, it would be a very pragmatic and very materialistic operation that they were carrying on, in the sense you just steal your shit, you share it with others, and then that's it. But no, a huge body of work of blogs are about political and ethical aspects of their practice, of the crime. Of course, they dealt with it with various degrees of seriousness, but they dealt with civil disobedience, anti-war manifestos, communism, capitalism, biases in the way media is produced, the representation of political campaign of Trump, feminism, homophobia, abortion, stuff about mental illness. So we also thought, okay, let's do that. What about, for the purpose of, of this paper, of the purpose of how problems are made? What if we actually took their and we decided to support them because they are, in terms, as Carl DiSalvo would probably define it, they create these agonistic spaces in which the status quo and the way we create community arise. So you could, and might as well, as a design researcher, say, okay, their crime is one thing, but there is also the kind of social initiative that they are carrying. So could we design for that? So yeah, actually, what is in between quotes is taken from one of their blog posts, just so you feel the level of activist rhetoric embedded into all the stuff. And we imagine what if, okay, so if we were to design to help them, straight off the bat, we would maybe take advantage of technology in order to lower down the need for trust in recognizing each other. So you could wear in some part of your clothing a device that kind of measures certain biological cues from your body, and then you correlate all these cues, and then you could actually discover in a physical level that, okay, this person has been shoplifting. Look, it goes from being very calm to being very alert to being very stressed to being very, very happy. The third theme is storytelling and community. And this theme was also really surprising because from being, because this theme, if the previous one was about engaging with the social in a kind of more structural way, this one is engaging with the social but in a more personal way, like stories of their life as shoplifters. So obviously you could have how to react to all the hate you get whenever you share stuff about your practice. There would be multi-page accounts on how you felt at what you went through when you actually got caught, sent to jail. There were a lot of posts supporting each other and kind of trying to make sense of what they are doing, but from a more personal perspective. And of course, then there is the big wealth of material regarding the properly collections of stuff they steal, that they obviously take nice pictures and then they share with all the rest of the community, and that goes from clothes to makeup to artistic supplies to food. So yeah, we realized, yeah, this community also goes beyond this swagger of looting, and they engage in very personal narratives of what this all means. So, so again, the same thing. What if we actually decided to engage and focus on the values that inform this community, but in a more personal sphere? We have value-sensitive design that continuously keeps engaging with putting the value first and foremost, creating a kind of interface of empathy. You have to filter everything you do. You have to discover first, a kind of empathize. Also research, of course, research through design has a whole history of that too. So yes, we basically imagine the creation of an artifact that was a kind of concealed drawer in which you, as a shoplifter, you could have both lives coming together without the risk of being caught by your parents. So you, in one part, somehow the wardrobe would kind of secretly shift and hide all that other second life, private life you have with, and you can always be sure you're going to keep it private, and you can keep nurturing it in your own way. So of course, we have illustrated 3 ways in which you can interact with found data. And our main issue, we have there is things we have done and we have things that we have not done. We have not attempted to say critical design is better than value sensitive. No, obviously not. We have also not said the best response to this data would be using this approach. Also not. But we also haven't, identified problems that were out there, taking them and solved them. No, we have actually made those problems using the different traditions of design research. in HCI. So yeah, this is my last slide, and I'm gonna get a little bit nostalgic here, but Kai has been amazing this year for many reasons. One of them is I've discovered the amazing complexity of the stuff that design researchers and researchers in general engage with. And I have realized that I have somehow this image of a maker kind of, for me as a metaphor, perfectly illustrates what we wanted to show with the paper, in the sense of, well, there is a Japanese art called Dorodango, and the point of the art is to make a perfect ball. Not perfect, but a compact ball. And I see that it's very related to what we have been doing here. We have been shifting through data. We have been molding that data. We have been shaping it. And we always knew we wanted to make a ball at the end. So with the imaginary abstracts, we really wanted to show that the problem is not neutral, that its construction entails observation, obviously, but it's also very much selection, and that those two activities are very linked. So thank you very much. Of course, the anonymous reviewers, wherever you are, you did an amazing job. The paper was fantastic. And to the PhD students like me in the audience, it got rejected 2 years ago, and look, honorary mention this year, so don't despair, it's gonna be awesome.
Okay, so we have time for some questions. We've got a microphone at the front if anyone would like to come down, if anyone has any questions for Enrique.
Go, John.
This is awkward, isn't it? Oh, no, I've been saved. I did have a question.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Trotto Rice, Sweden. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. There is always one paper that makes it worth to go to a conference. I think that's it for
Sorry?
me. Thank you. There is always one paper that makes it worth to go to a conference.
Hola! Oh my God.
I'm so excited. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thanks to you.
Can you tell me more about the sphere, the ball, please?
Yeah, I mean, it's because I'm kind of fascinated with this philosopher. His name is Tristan Garcia, and he argues that things are not really, like the moment you compress one thing and you completely define it without considering that one thing is many things under and many things on top, but you make it compact and you make it shiny, the thing loses a lot of meaning. So from my point of view, I think design research is engaging with stuff in which you cannot make the ball unless you are very, very, very careful. So when I read that paper, it was also my first CHI, and I was here in CHI, and the way I really felt a kind of responsibility from my practice of design research that if we started with a problem, we would be. It's so much pressure to try to do design research on prison inmates or on the dispossessed or on all that stuff that if you have to do it and say, what is the problem? It's just, you're not going to go anywhere. Sorry for being so blunt about it. Yes.
Thank you.
I think we'll wrap there. Rather than me have to ask you a question about my own paper.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. One more round.